Now, if you are the leader of the company, and it is your company, and you are allowing people not to touch the line, if you're allowing people not to follow up 7 times, if you're allowing people not to engage with after sale, then that is your fault, because we encourage what we allow. I was a women's basketball coach at Riverdale High School for 13 years. I got there when I was 19. I stayed till I was 31. I was lucky enough, and just by the grace of God, to take over as the head coach at 22 years old. And that made me the youngest head coach in the state of Tennessee at the second largest high school. And they had never won a championship in girls basketball in 30 years. The last time they were in a championship game was 1979. They were 31-0 going into that game and lost the state championship game. How heartbreaking would that be? To go 31-0 and get to the pinnacle and lose in the championship game. So when I took over at 22 years old, I started talking a much bigger game. I started telling people we were going to be a championship team and we were going to win championships, and everybody laughed at me and they made fun of me, and I kept hearing the same thing over and over. This is a football school. They had won 4 state championships in football. They had been in 9 state championship games in football. When I started talking about we're going to win championship, literally everybody laughed at me and they made fun of me, and they're like, who is this kid who's talking about doing something that's never been done here? And I started building this program. And I worked typically 80 hours a week, every week. 7 days a week. I remember getting up and going to church on Sunday morning and going straight to my office and working 8 to 10 hours on a Sunday. And that was my life for 13 years. 7 days a week, 80 hours a week. And it took me about 9 years to take that place and turn it into a championship team, which is why you see this big gaudy championship ring. And that school would go on to win 7 of the next 9 state championships in girls basketball in the state of Tennessee and become a dynasty. Right? That became the place for your daughter to go play basketball. Now, I'm telling you this because part of what I'm going to teach you today is I did not win a championship or go to another level by working harder. See, I actually believe that every year I would get to the same place, I would win 25 games a year, and I would meet the same person, and that same person was named Rick Insell, and Rick Insell was at Shelbyville High School, and I would go my way and win 25 games, and Rick would go his way and win 25 or 30 games, and then we would meet up, and he had experience, he had won 10 state championships, and I would lose, and I would go back home and I'd say, man, I'm just going to come back next year and work harder, and I'm going to work harder. But I was already working 80 hours a week. I was already working 7 days a week, right? And after 7 years of getting to the same place, this is what business people do. They get to the same place, they do the same amount, they show incremental growth, they make the same amount of money, and they do that year after year after year after year after year, and they can't seem to break through this. And after 7 years of getting to the same place, I finally became humble enough and teachable enough and coachable enough and frustrated enough to go, somebody knows how to do what I want to do. And I sat down with 6 coaches who had won championships, and Rick Insell was one of them. And I sat down with Coach Insell at Demas' Steakhouse in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. And I sat down and I bought him dinner and I said, Coach, I would like to win a championship. And he looks at me and he goes, no, you don't. No, you don't really want to win a championship. And I said, no, I really do want to win a championship. And he said, no, you don't want to win a championship. He said, because you play weak teams and you win 25 games and everybody tells you how great you are because they've never won any games at Riverdale High School, and you kind of strut around like you're somebody, but you don't really want to win a championship. And at first it kind of offended me. I'm like, man, I just bought you a steak. At least you could be nice to me. He said, go back and drop all the weak teams. Schedule the best teams, not just in Tennessee, but in the United States. He said, go out west and play teams in California because they're finesse in California. He said, go to Texas because them girls in Texas are tough. And go to the East Coast because they play different in the East Coast than they do in the Midwest. And he said, you're going to get beat by some of those people. He said, but something's going to happen to you because your team is going to be battle tested. That's what he said, battle tested. I never forgot that. And I was coachable. I want you to listen to what I'm about to tell you. I was 100% humble and 100% sick of getting the same results I had gotten for 7 straight years. And I did exactly what that man told me. I went home that night and I dropped all the weak teams. And I went out west and played teams in Arizona. And I went to California and played them. And I went to Texas and I went to Florida. And we did lose some of those games. But guess what we did the very next year? We won a state championship. Now, let me ask you a question. Did I try harder or did I try differently? See, over the last year, I've written 22 books. Over the last year, I have immersed myself in one thing: quantum leaps, big table moves, explosive growth. That's all I've studied from the top people in the world. How to 10x something versus 2x something. How to show an explosive growth in something. And you never show an explosive growth in something by working harder. You show an explosive growth in something by trying differently. Everybody with me? And so when I'm trying differently, when I'm thinking about this, because I actually am writing a book right now called The Big Table. And the big table is the biggest game in business. It's the biggest opportunities available to you that you may or may not be focusing on. And this came to me when watching an interview with the great psychologist Price Pritchett. Pritchett wrote U Squared. He wrote the Quantum Leap Strategies, 82 years old. And he started off as a clinical psychologist. And he was in the military and he worked at the Pentagon and he left there and he did executive assessments. And that's what he did for a living, was do executive assessments for big companies. And then he came in one day out of nowhere and he told his company, we're going into mergers and acquisitions. Why are we going into mergers and acquisitions? We've never done mergers and acquisitions. We do executive assessments. And he said, because mergers and acquisitions is the biggest game in business. It's the big table. Now I want you to think about this. He had never done a merger or acquisition before. He had never been in that space before. He was a clinical psychologist. He worked in a psychiatric ward for a year, and then he got into executive assessments. Some of you run that title company like, I work in a psychiatric ward every day. I run a psychiatric ward. Okay? And now, so this is what, he's a clinical psychologist that worked in a psychiatric ward that then did executive assessments, and then one day came in and said, no, we're going over here. And his staff looked at him like, you're crazy. We don't do this. And within 6 years, he was the #1 mergers and acquisitions expert in the United States. And he was doing big mergers for GE and all these major companies, because when two companies merge or are acquired, there's all kinds of dysfunction that come along with mergers and acquisitions. Very few mergers and acquisitions actually work, because you're combining two different cultures and two different belief systems and two different groups. But he became the #1 guy in the world. Then he wrote U Squared and the Quantum Leap Strategy, and he sold 14 million copies of those little books. So I'm watching him on this interview one day, and this guy's asking him, why did you go into mergers and acquisitions? And he says, because that was the biggest game in business. That was the big table. And when I heard that, I knew I had the title of my next book, called The Big Table. So today I'm actually going to break down, how do you do something much bigger in life? How many of you have run a business for a number of years and showed incremental growth? Incremental growth would be year over year, you do 5% better or 7% better. You work harder, but you get back to the same place and you're frustrated because you see other people exploding and you see other people doing bigger things and you see other people playing at a higher level and you're sitting there going, they're not smarter than me. Like, how did that person go do that? And I'm over here doing the same thing, getting the same result, just like me as a basketball coach, year after year after year. I'd win 25 games, then I'd win 27, then I'd win 28, then I'd win 25, then I'd win 30. But I never got to the big table of winning a championship until I tried different. So the big thing I want you to take away from today is that you never show a quantum leap by trying harder. But you do show a quantum leap by trying differently. Now, 2 years ago, I was in Galveston, Texas. Any of y'all been to Galveston, Texas? Okay, it's a city that I don't recommend ever going to in your lifetime. And I'm going to Houston tonight. When I leave here, I'm going to Houston, Texas. And I travel all over the world, and I speak in some cities I go to, and I'm like, I'd love to come back to this city. And some cities I go to, and I go, I never want to come back to this city. And Galveston was one of those cities. But I was there to speak at a real estate event 2 years ago, and they wanted me to come in because I've coached some of the top real estate agents in the country. I've coached the #1 real estate agent in the United States, male. I've coached the #1 female in the United States. These are the big boys and the big girls. These are people doing 500 to 2,000 deals. These are people making millions of dollars. These are the best of the best of the best. Most of them are building teams, right? And the guy I coached that was the #1 male agent in the United States says the year he did 500 deals, he was the most miserable year of his life. He said, it was the worst year of my life when I did 500 deals. So he said, I need to build a team. And then he went and recruited X number of people. And then he recruited X number of people. And next thing you know, he has 10,000 people in his downline. He's an EXP agent. He's making $6 to $10 million a year. He could have never made $6 to $10 million a year selling 500 homes. You with me? And he figured out what I really need to do is study marketing. And I need to become great at marketing. I need to become great at building a team. I need to become great at building a downline. And he went from being a single agent with a little team and a lot of headache to building a big team and having 10,000 people. And now he's making millions of dollars a year. And he didn't try any harder. He actually did what?
Differently.
He tried differently. So I got to get in your brain, because all I've ever known in my life is hard work. I was raised by a single mom. My mom to this day still works. When I call her, she's working. She's like Martha in the Bible. Y'all know Martha, where she's always busy, and Jesus is there. She's just cleaning things up. And it's like, take a break. That's my mother. When my mother comes to my house, she cleans my house. You with me? That is my mom. We get up, we go to work. We work hard. We work. We don't stop working. This is how I was raised, right? You probably know this. You two right here, right? And this is how we work, and this is how we work, and this is how we work. And that is hardwired in me to be a grinder. Just work harder. Work 80 hours a week. If you can't get it done in 80, work more. That is who I am as a person. But what I kept seeing in my business, especially my coaching business, was I kept getting to a similar point year after year after year. And no matter how hard I work, I'd make $300,000 or $400,000 more dollars. And one year I made $1 million more dollars than I did the year before. But I kept kind of getting back to a set point. Kind of like your weight gets to a set point. You understand what I'm saying? It's like for some reason I keep getting back to the same freaking weight. And I'm eating better and I'm going to the gym, but I weigh the same amount. That's called a set point. Well, what happens in businesses is you get back to the same set point because you keep doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over. And you go, man, this is frustrating. Why can't I get a seat at a bigger table? So what I'm going to show you is I actually took quantum leaps. I studied quantum leaps for about 2 years. I studied all of the literature that's out there on the science of scaling, and I deconstructed it and I codified it. When I write a book, what I basically do is go into the woods and I take all this material and I deconstruct it and I go, this is how we can do this. So how many of you are open to trying something differently versus trying harder? How many of you are open to that, right? And if you work long enough and hard enough and you get mad enough, one day you'll go, that's it. How many of you are wanting to throw this business in the trash can before? Anybody want to do that? It's like, I'm done with this business. And it's a great business some years, and it's a terrible business some years, right? And I've coached all the great real estate people, and all the great mortgage people, and all the great title people, and all the great insurance people. I've coached them all. I've seen them all. And in some markets, it's incredible, and some markets it's terrible, right or wrong? Some years it's easy, and sometimes it's hard. Just like when I was coaching basketball. Sometimes I had great teams, and I would tell people we'd practice an hour and a half with a great team because I didn't want to wear them down. Then my last team was like the Bad News Bears. The worst team I ever coached. You know how many hours we had to practice with those teams? 6 hours a day. I'd bring them in before school. I'd bring them in at lunch. I'd bring them out because we couldn't practice enough to get good enough to win enough games. Everybody with me? Well, I want you to think about this in the markets, is when it's not working, you got to do something different. And so they asked me to Galveston, Texas. It was 50 real estate agents. And they said, we want you to talk about how to recession-proof a business. And I started thinking about this talk. And Tabitha, guess what I figured out? You don't recession-proof a business when you're in the middle of a recession. Yes or no? You don't wait till you get in the middle of a bad economic market where rates are 7% or whatever, and then say, oh, I got to figure out freaking recession-proof this business. There comes a time when winter asks what you've been doing all spring and summer. And winter is always coming, yes or no? See, basketball was a winter sport. I used to bring my girl basketball players in at 4:30 in the morning in the summer. A lot of the stuff I did back in 20 years ago, I'd be in federal prison today. Because it was tough to play for me. It's like going into the military to play for me. We're in at 4:30 in the morning. And I was telling my girls basketball players, when everybody else is laying out at the country club, when them other girls are going to the country club, we're going to be beating them because we never win championships during the season. We win championships in off season. And the off season was tougher than the season, right? Well, there comes a time when winter asks what you've been doing all spring and summer, and winter's always coming. This is one of my concepts. So I go in to do this speaking engagement to these real estate agents, and I start thinking, well, what can we do to recession-proof a business? And I came up with all these cool strategies that they could try, new things. And then I said, before I get started teaching you something new, I'm going to ask a basic question. How many of you prospect every day for a minimum of 2 hours? And there were 50 real estate agents in that room, and out of 50, what do you think the number was? How many out of 50 do you think prospect every day for 2 hours? One. One little person raised his hand. And I said, how many of you, every stat in real estate tells me the same thing. The average person's going to buy 4 to 7 houses in their lifetime. Each satisfied person should be worth 5.7 referrals over the lifetime of the consumer. How many of you would like to get all 4 to 7 houses of that person who buys a house? How many think raise their hand? All of them. Yet 98% of real estate agents never follow up in a meaningful way after the sale. You're telling me one thing, but you're doing another thing. Your actions are not aligning with the facts. And the facts are this: it takes 7 to 15 touches, 80% of the time, to convert someone who is interested in something to someone who is buying something. Everybody with me? Yes. There are no wasted touches. There are no wasted movements. There are no wasted actions. So if it takes 7 to 15 touches 80% of the time to convert a prospect to a client, and every client is going to buy 4 to 7 houses, yet 98% of people never follow up in a meaningful way, I asked the real estate agents, how many of you follow up 7 times on a lead? How many in the room? 1 out of 50. Same little dude, by the way. I said, how many of you follow up? This goes for you guys too, because if you're in the business of representing people who buy and sell real estate, and it represents you too, because if I'm going to do 7 real estate deals, how many of those would you like to do? All of them. But what if you don't follow up with me in a meaningful way after the transaction's over? I don't even like the word transact. The word transact means to discard. It means I used you and I don't need you anymore. That is not the kind of relationship you want to build with people. You want to build transformational relationships that look like this. I will never do a real estate deal without using that person. But if you don't follow up after the sale is over, there's no meaningful engagement after the sale, then you are really not serious about what I'm talking about today. And none of those agents in that room needed to know how to recession-proof a business. They needed to know how to do basic things to run a business. Yes or no? Hey, this is Coach Michael Burt. I'm here at the Greatness Factory today, the Level 10 podcast studio. And as you can see behind, I got new imaging. I got a new concept. The big table is a metaphor for the biggest opportunities that are available to you that you're trying to work toward in your life. We're going to go to work on activating 3 parts of your nature. You first, that's science of winning. That's habits of the top 1%. That's the language that we use every single day. That's the activation of prey drive. That's the A to B exercise that we do. And then we're going to go to work on your business. And the business is like got these 6 core components, right? The activation of your team's prey drive, the explanation of value, the lead generation system, the follow-up and conversion, the engagement after the sale. We then move to activating your wealth. 8-figure people stuck in 6-figure vehicles. How do we expose you to some of the best thought leaders in the world as it relates to what's going on in the market, how to make investments, how to raise capital, and put all this together, folks, and we are getting a seat at a much bigger table. I'm Coach Michael Burt. I can't wait for you to see this podcast. It's called The Big Table. We're going to help you secure your seat there. Follow along, engage with me, hit that subscribe button. Every one of you then here has one of 3 problems, right? You have a leads problem, you don't have enough leads, you have a conversion problem, you're not good at converting the leads, or you have an engagement problem. And it doesn't matter if I'm coaching a $4 billion bank, which I've been coaching in New Orleans, and I'm coaching all the commercial lenders, okay? Or I'm coaching a real estate company or an insurance company or whoever I'm coaching, they only have one of 3 problems: a leads problem, a conversion problem, or an engagement problem. Does everybody see that? They don't have enough leads, they don't have enough conversion of those leads, they don't have enough engagement after the sale. Okay, so that particular day, what we figured out is those people did not need to recession-proof the business. They needed to wake up and do basic things every day to build a business. So my standard rule is 35 touches a day, minimum. So I wake up in the morning, I touch 35 people every day, minimum 35 to 57. Who am I calling? Current clients, past clients, strategic partners, anywhere that I can go looking for new opportunity and new money. Everybody with me? I don't need more money, I need more people. The people have the money. And when I used to work with John Floyd at Old South, and I was with him this week, he used to say if they don't live under a bridge or in a box, they're going to buy a house. And when they do, I want them to buy one from Old South Properties. Everybody with me? Yeah. Yep. Now, it's just something I never forgot that he used to say. So when you think about this, it's like people are going to buy a house at some point, and when they do, they're going to use somebody in this room. And the back of every person's little brain, right? And I love your hair because it's so much nicer than mine. And it's got like in the back of every person's brain is a little piece of real estate. And in that piece of real estate, there's only enough room for one real estate agent, or maybe 2, one mortgage person, maybe 2, one title person, maybe 2. They don't have enough room in the real estate to think of 10 different people when they go to do that real estate deal. They go, she's my girl, he's my guy, that's who I call. Everybody with me? So owning that piece of real estate is very important. And the way you own that piece of real estate is through engagement, follow-up, touches. So if I ask you today, is everybody in this room prospecting a minimum of 35 touches a day? Are you following up 7 to 15 times on every lead that comes in the door? Do you and your people and your team engage after the sale like you should in a meaningful way? How many of you already found some places you could pick up money right there? Yes or no? Okay. Now, I produce, 500 to 1,500 leads a month by all the stuff that I do. I guarantee you, if I pulled up my CRM right now, there are leads in that CRM that have not been touched 7 times. Everybody with me? There are people who have not been engaged with. So when I'm coaching people, it's like it's hard to find money right now. It's hard to do deals right now. It is harder today than it used to be. It's just as hard for me to sell coaching as it for you to sell title. Everybody with me? Okay, so what do we have to do? Like basketball teams that need to practice more, we need to get better at the basic things that we got to do. My bad teams, we practice 6 hours a day. We'd spend an hour on nothing but dribbling and passing. Everybody with me? Do you know that when I got to Riverdale, when I was sitting in tryouts one day at 19 years old, we threw the ball to the girl in the wing and we said, kick it down low to the post player. She put the ball down on the floor and kicked it down there. You don't kick a basketball, folks. You kick a football. You kick a soccer ball. You don't kick a basketball. So you see how far we had to go to build championship teams there? We had to go a long way to build championship teams, okay? So if we're doing the basic things, how many of you have found an area right there that you can do better? Raise your hand if you found an area right now you can do better. Yes or no? Now, if you are the leader of the company, and it is your company, and you are allowing people not to touch the line, if you're allowing people not to follow up 7 times, if you're allowing people not to engage with after sale, then that is your fault. Because we encourage what we allow. Yes or no? Yes. We encourage what we allow. We allow people to halfway do it. So there's standards, there's identity, there's accountability, there's language. And what I see a lot of people do, it's like if I said, like yesterday, one of my salespeople, she turned in, I don't know how many touches did she turn in, Jana? She didn't turn in 35, she turned in what? 24. I say, well, 24 ain't 35. And if you want to work with me, because I'm the one spending all the money to drive those leads, then you need to touch 35. Or you can find somewhere else to work. Everybody with me? Because if I just go, it's okay that you didn't do 35, but I didn't. What I said to her is you spend too much time with current customers and not enough time getting new customers. I want you to spend an hour with our current customers. I don't want you to spend 6 hours. You need to go get some new money, or your pipeline's going to be dry and you're not going to hit your sales goals. And if you don't hit your sales goals, you're not going to work, Coach Burt, because we hit our goals here. Everybody with me? Do you know that's the first thing I noticed when I left sports and got into business? Nobody had any accountability. Nobody had any standards. Nobody had any rules. In the sports world, if you didn't perform, you don't play. We have a place for you. It's called sitting on the bench. Then we get in the business world, we say we're supposed to go 35 touches, but we only go 24 because yesterday I was busy. And the purpose of the business is to generate a new customer. So if we've got these basic things in place, see, we don't really need to talk about the big table moves until what? Until we do the basic things it takes to be successful every day. And if we're not doing the basic things it takes to be successful, we don't even need to be talking about these big table moves, okay? Now, if we're doing this, now what happened is there was a point in my life, and when I study a lot of psychology, I wish I went and got my degree in psychology versus business, but most of what I do is psychology, so I study a lot of psychology, and the first thing I notice about people is where there's no pain, there's no change. So there's most likely not going to be a significant move in your business until you are sick and tired of something in your current business, and you're so sick of it that you're ready to take action. Now, not long ago, I hired a new trainer, and I paid $5,000 for 90 days with this trainer. Okay? And at first, when he said $5,000, he said, I'll work out with you personally 30 times, and right, I'll plan all your nutrition because I travel all the time. At first, I go, man, $5,000 for 90 days? It's a lot of money for 90 days. Like 30 workouts with you. Guess what happened when I paid the $5,000? I didn't miss one workout. Even when I'm on the road, dead tired, get to a hotel at 9 o'clock, can't even see straight. I'm like, I ain't missing that damn workout. You know why? Because I paid $5,000 for this dude to plan my workout. That is called psychological demand. When you pay attention. When you do not pay, you don't pay attention. So what happens in a business is, what I see in most businesses is you could live with a low-grade fever for a long time. When the fever gets to 104, you go to the doctor. Right? What I see with a lot of businesses, they kind of accept things and accept things and accept things and accept things for a long period of time until there's a trigger moment. And the trigger moment is like, I'm tired of messing around moment. Everybody with me?
Yep.
Okay, I'm tired of messing around. And when I'm tired of messing around, it's like, boom. So what is a trigger moment for you? Is it getting the same results month after month? Is it tolerating the same person that don't touch the line every day? Is it underperforming? Is it not winning? Is it, what is the trigger moment got to be? The trigger moment for me was me watching that interview and going, what's the big table for me? Okay, and so when you think about it, until we get sick and tired, we don't get sick and tired. So I want you to think about this formula. The business you're in is highly saturated and highly commoditized, yes or no? Just like my business, just like a real estate business, just like any business. There's too many people competing for the same space. What do we really compete on, and what are we really selling, okay? And what we're really selling is not just a service, we're actually selling a skill. The people who have the best skills typically make the most money. So when you think about the skill, what I want you to think about is what skill are you really selling me, okay? And then what problem are you solving? And then the vehicle you have chosen is actually the title business. Now, here's a question. Can the vehicle get you to your goals? You see, the #1 real estate agent in the country figured out that he was working hard, he was doing the most deals, but he actually couldn't get to his financial goals because he had no free time, no life, and no nothing. He was miserable. So he didn't meet his happiness goals. He really had a hard time meeting his financial goals. So when you are in a vehicle that cannot hit your goals, you have 3 options. #1, you can torch it. You can say, I'm done with this vehicle. Okay? #2, you can tweak it, which means you can strategically pivot it. Okay, now let me give an example. I run a coaching business. Okay, that is what I've been doing for 17 years. It is one of the hardest businesses you will ever run. People love you one day and they don't like you the next day. They see me say something, I like this little dude filming me right here, capture something and put it on Instagram, and somebody don't like it. Then they want to quit. Or they woke up today and they had a bad month and they want to quit. Or they don't like something and they want to quit. I'm dealing with human nature. And human nature is we want to do good, just like Paul in the Bible, but we can't quite do it. We try hard, but we can't do it. So I've chosen a vehicle 17 years ago that's very hard. It's heavily dependent on me. Okay, and I started going, what can I do with this vehicle? So you're going to see some things that I decided to do. I decided to get heavy into real estate. We own about $25 million worth of real estate that I purchased over the last X number of years. I decided to get into commercial real estate and start building greatness factories. I started raising capital. So I've raised about $30 million in the last 12 months for 3 different funds, private equity funds, various funds. I started getting equity in companies. I started being strategic partners with people because I kept going. I kept working harder, but I kept getting back to the same place with my primary business. Does everybody see that? And I kept going, okay, what skill do I have? I can't cook. I can't fix anything. I'm geographically illiterate. Like there's so many things that I'm terrible at, okay? But I can flat out activate something inside of people. And I started going, what if I could activate a business? What if I could get equity in the business? What if I could activate raising capital? What if I could build cool real estate places? What if I could do this, right? What if I could flip things? What if I could flip big businesses? What if I could do these things? And guess what I found out? When I applied the skill to a different problem, I actually could do much bigger things than I could in the primary vehicle I was in. Everybody see that? I started using the same skill to solve a problem, and I applied it to a different vehicle. Everybody with me? So for the purposes of this talk, because I don't want any of you to say after this business, I'm giving it title business up after I heard him talk. Because I've had that happen before. I've had people come see me speak and they're like, man, you motivated me to quit my job today. Okay, and that's good if you hate your job, okay? But if it's your team, you don't want them to quit because they heard me talk. But I do want you thinking, if I went around this room today and I said, what is your primary skill? Could you sum that skill up in one word? What is the primary problem you solve, and who would pay you the most money to solve that problem? Can the vehicle grow in scale in its current form? Or does the vehicle need to be tweaked? Does it need to be torched? Or could it be utilized? Guess where most of that $30 million I've raised came from? Came from my coaching students. What if the coaching business became a feeder system to the capital raising business? And what if I told you that I partner with some of my top coaching students to create some of these things that we've done. So what if I told you the coaching business is very valuable to this equation? Everybody with me? So what if I just changed, Sherry, the way I see the coaching business versus this is hard and this is a hard business too. This is actually a very valuable business. And I actually do enjoy coaching people. But what if I could take the people I was coaching and we could go do something way bigger? And I could partner with my most successful students. And the students were coming to me first to coach them on how to do bigger things. Everybody with me? See, now I'm changing because I'm a defensive pessimist by nature. That means the way my brain operates, it actually focuses on the negative more than it does the positive. I have to train my brain in what makes me happy. I have to train my brain to see the positive. I have to train my brain to be more of a strategic optimist versus a defensive pessimist. Not one is better than other. This is how God made me. Everybody with me? But I have to recognize that I can be more negative than positive. You're like, well, you write positive books. How do you do that? But because I have to train my brain, because I can go through a whole day and have 100 good things happen and one negative thing happen, and that's what my brain would focus on. So I've done a lot of study in how do you live in the gain versus the gap. How do you retrain the brain? How do you change? Instead of going to the sewer cycle and saying this business is hard, because I'm sure you guys have said this over the last couple of years. Gosh, this business is miserable. Why did I get in this business? It's so hard to do this today. I hate this business, okay? Well, you wouldn't hate it a couple of years ago when you're making a bunch of money. Right or wrong? You're like, this is the best business in the world. So the way you look at something is very important to your happiness.